The KuKirin G4 has perhaps become the most controversial scooter of recent times. I loved it, many people hate it, but now here's the G2. And in this video we got answers to those questions on whether it can be better, worse, or if the same issues remain. What they have always been. Recently there was something unclear to me here. I really liked it, used it a lot while I had it, and I got genuinely positive impressions about it. Despite this, I read many criticisms about the scooter in the G4 Facebook group, and I have to say, these criticisms are mostly well-founded. There are design flaws here, material selection issues, and the usual problems you find with the Chinese scooters. Assembly problems. So the G4 is not flawless. Some love it, others hate it, and there are hardly any middle opinions. The question is, how is the G2? Since the G2 doesn't look much different from the G4, it has the same plain and simple. Ip designed the new Koptok. And this industrial design, for me at least, is really cool. I really like this grayish black color with the matching orange accessories. So in my opinion, the scooter looks great on the outside, just like the G4, which also looks great. The most important question, of course, isn't about appearances, but about how this scooter turned out, whether those design issues from the G4 persisted, did it inherit those early stage problems from the G4, got me there. In this video, I'll be answering your questions. Before we dive in, as usual, let's do an unboxing because we assemble it, and I'll also tell you about the specifications, and at the end I'll share my experiences, and then at the end I'll tell you what's what. How satisfied I was with this scooter. The unboxing and assembly do not take any longer. Like with the G4 or other KuKirin scooters, because the manufacturer basically everything. Install it on the machine, assemble it, and put it in the box. Our only job is to attach the rear mudguard and put on the handlebar putty. Once we have this sorted, the scooter is basically ready to use. Obviously, we have to consider these problems that usually occur with Chinese scooters. There is very little quality control at the end of the production line, which roughly means that it happens a very tight screw, an over-tightened screw can happen. A loose screw, it can happen that the brake won't engage, and it's almost certain that you won't find any lubrication in poorly constructed ones. These definitely need to be checked and replaced. And if you're already handling the screws, it's worth checking if there's thread locking paste on them because it's visible. So if you were to place a business card on the scooter, these steps definitely don't need to be there. So that's pretty much it for the assembly. There's not much point in dwelling on it. Let's move on. The exterior of the scooter. Well, the exterior, as I mentioned, is basically the same as the G4, just a bit smaller and good. It became much lighter since the G4 was 42 kilograms according to my memory, but the G2 weighs only 27 kilograms, which is already considered a fairly acceptable weight. The exterior is very deceiving. It looks a lot like the G4. If the two scooters are not side by side, we might even confuse them. When viewed from the front, the most noticeable difference is that the G4's steering column is made of two rods and the connecting rods, but at the gizzards we get a completely closed section. The handlebar cannot be raised on the G2, which is a disadvantage because of the height of the bar. At 184 centimeters, it was still just fine for me, but I don't think this scooter will be comfortably usable for anyone above 190 centimeters. Its seat is not detachable. It inherited many things from the G4, like the head fairing and the lamp. The lamp, the indicator, the rear light, the rear indicator, and the corner support, all these are the same in the G4. Like I said, the design is sort of industrial. Plain, simple thing. And I think with this, the scooter does incredibly well on the street. I've been asked about it because this scooter looks really nice and it's probably very strong and surely goes very fast. The guy was really surprised when I told him it's only 800 watts and has a range of just 45 kilometers. It's maximum speed, so it gives much more to the eye than any other. But how much is actually inside? So let's look at the specifications now that I've touched on the technical details a bit. The KuKirin engine has an 800W motor. The battery is 48 volts and 15 amps. The manufacturer provides this data with a top speed of 45 kilometers per hour and a range of 55 kilometers. The motor has a torque of 29 Newton meters at the deepest. It can be considered as average torque. Ultimately, it's perfectly suitable for the 800-watt motor. We also get a 20% climbability and a maximum load capacity of 120 kilograms. And well, that's about all the important things I had to say about the electrical system. What's also important is that there are disc brakes at the front and rear, both mechanical, and we have front and rear shock absorbers. As I said, in the front there's the usual C suspension, and in the back there's a simple swing arm suspension with adjustable spring hardness for both. The steaming and the start goes through the mingling. Okay, we're done with the unboxing, assembly, exterior, and specifications, so now it's time for the real experiences. I'll start with the G2 and a bit with the G4. The G4 is essentially a larger G2, heavier, bigger, a larger, stronger structure than the machine. Unfortunately, the G4 has design flaws and issues generally related to assembly. The main problem with gene therapy is that there is a tendency for the wheel to wobble, if I remember correctly. The manufacturer always releases a revised version of the G4, making slight modifications to reduce this wobbling tendency. But here, it's basically a design flaw. So this tendency, it can be reduced, but it is unlikely to be completely eliminated. The scooter I tried did not wobble, but I saw more than 1 or 2 people who had accidents because of wobbling. I can't say why this happens. Whether it was because of my way of handling the scooter or the poor quality of the manufactured scooters, which is a fact. The scooter I tried did not wobble. Nevertheless, it's hard to deny that there's a design issue here, which is because I will try to show it at the target running gear so you can understand better. The steering axis is behind the wheel axis, which causes the wheel to have a tendency to turn backwards. When we stand on a C suspension scooter, this C actually wants to close a bit more, and this shifts the axle a bit forward, like the steering axis, and because of this reversing maneuver will be even more pronounced. Maybe the best, if you picture in front of you, picture the Tesco shopping cart, you need such a thing too. The wheel, there's an axle, and further back there's a wheel, and when you start pushing it, the wheel is always at the back. So the main question when trying out the G2 for me was whether it still had that wobbling tendency. This design flaw from the G4 has persisted. Well, on one hand, the design flaw remains, which is unfortunately bad news. The good news is that it's just the scooter being weaker. Due to weaker acceleration and lower torque, this swaying tendency has significantly decreased. Swaying often occurs when we're accelerating, and the stronger the rear wheel, the more the built-in motor, the more the front of the scooter lifts and the more it loses torque. It is very easy for this wobbling to occur with an 800-watt motor with a smaller torque. There is much less of this leaning back sensation. So my shaking hands should also decrease. Moreover, that the top speed is also lower, although I saw a video where a lighter person reached 50 kilometers per hour with the G2. The maximum under me was around 42, 43. It was achievable. I'm roughly 100 kilograms. By the way, the factory specifications state a top speed of 45 kilometers per hour, as I mentioned. You can exceed this with a lower body weight. If we look at the G2, the tendency to wobble unfortunately remains, although it's much less pronounced than in the original model. And in every way, so the next question might be about how it was to travel with the G2. Well, as I mentioned, the G2 is weaker than the G4. So its hill climbing ability is also worse than the G4. The good news is that KuKirin usually doesn't lie about their motor's power rating, so what is listed as 800 watts is accurate. They probably don't give the peak torque of 800 watts, nor do they give the peak performance, by the way. The peak performance is, this engine had 1200 volts, but the manufacturer says the engine is only 800 watts. And it's good because really the 800W, the 1200W is more like marketing. This would be good for nonsense data. The range is more or less okay. The top speed is roughly there. As I said, I weigh 100 kilograms and they're testing with a body weight of 65 kilograms. So that's the difference. Understandable. From this perspective, the G2, like the G4, it's a decent structure. It indeed delivers the data that the manufacturer provides. The pedal size was absolutely perfect for me. I have size 44.5 feet. I fit very comfortably in it. The factory set suspension feels a bit soft to me. It hits bigger road bumps, but as I said, you can adjust the stiffness of the suspension, so that's not a problem either. Just adjust it to your body weight and you won't have any issues. By the way, the suspension worked absolutely well. It absorbed the road imperfections and didn't want to jerk the meat out of my hand, and not the government either. What I can mention as a negative is, again, the usual, the dashboard and the lights. The integrated fairing dashboard and lights look really good, but I hope the lights are strong enough. The dashboard's backlight is really dim, so if you want to use it in sunlight, you simply can't see anything on it. The only good thing is that the mode change and turning on the lights can be managed. Also with the power button on the handlebar, pressing twice briefly switches the mode, pressing once turns on the light. And well, pressing it once more, you turn off the light. The problem, however, is that you won't see on the dashboard which mode you're in while driving. We have 3 modes. We have the normal, a sport, and a partial mode. You can switch between these. Naturally, top speed changes on this, but you won't see it on the dashboard to know where exactly you are. There's really no issue with the first indicator. The lights are on both sides of the head. It's relatively high when viewed from the front, high enough for a driver to notice. The rear lamp is the usual. Again, they put it under the footrest. Basically, it's worthless from a car. You can't see anything, just like you can't see the rear indicator from a car. So this is still not a good solution. The electronics and the switch are inside the scooter, though. If you spend a little money and buy a lever indicator for front and back, or a handlebar end indicator for the front, that means a lot more. I would say, in my opinion, that the G2 belongs on bike paths, not among cars. I say this despite the fact that current regulations do not allow electronic scooters on a bike paths. To commute with neither the strong one nor the weak one. Still, if you ask me, I can tell you, I would rather imagine this scooter on a bike path. Like between cars. Between cars, neither the top speed nor the torque nor the acceleration is sufficient to drive safely and keep up with the flow of traffic. As usual, I'll tell you who I recommend this scooter to. I see young adults and teenagers on this. The top speed, torque and acceleration of this scooter are not crazy. You won't fall off. If I had teenage sons, I'd already be comfortable giving them this scooter. Sure, the man with normal protective gear. And about the normal protective gear, you can see in the video what kind of helmet we protect with. When riding, I definitely recommend a full face helmet, because if you fly over the handlebars, the first thing that will hit the asphalt is your head. So put on a proper helmet. I'll also add the availability of this helmet below the video. Well, that's about all I can say about the G2. If you're curious for more information, check out the link below the YouTube video that takes you to the written article, where you'll find more information and details. And now, you can also find the link to the scooter and the coupon code to purchase it next to the helmet under the video. Definitely check it out, because the price of this scooter is extremely good. Apart from it, considering the external performance and capabilities, we got a price below 200,000 forints, which I think is very reasonable. Okay, well, that's about it. I'm done filming for this week. I'll be back next week with more videos. Powdered sugar. Of course, it pays well. So stick around. Good, and take care of yourselves. Hi, guys.